Do you want your business to grow faster? Are you open to new and out-of-the-box ways to drive revenues and increase value? How do you imagine the most successful entrepreneurs and business leaders double, triple, or expand their businesses tenfold or more? The answer is deals. This is a weekly podcast featuring conversations with business owners, executives, and leaders as we reveal behind-the-scenes details that give you, our listeners, the confidence to pursue your own deal-driven growth. On the show, we discuss a huge variety of deals, everything from large, complex mergers and acquisitions to smaller deals that you can do even without significant capital. My name is Corey Kupfer, and I've been supporting deal-driven growth for businesses for 35 years as a successful entrepreneur, professional negotiator, and attorney. My goal is to help you strategize, plan for, find, and complete deals that will help your company grow faster. Welcome to the Deal Quest podcast. Let's get started. Deal Quest listeners and viewers, I am so excited to have Dean McFlicker on the podcast. He is regarded as one of Hollywood's top marketing experts. He's an award-winning producer and director of some of the biggest productions with the greatest stars. He directed J-Lo and John Legend in the Super Bowl spots, producing events for Dolly Parton Radio City Music Hall, and creating hit shows starring globally beloved Minions. I mean, the list of TV and other productions, I can go on and on and on. His full bio is going to be in the show notes, so definitely check it out. He's done Broadway, he's done TV, he's worked with some of the most amazing folks. He's also a professional speaker and has a phenomenal TEDx talk. And he has a company, McFlicker Media, now that works with not only folks in the entertainment field, although plenty of those, but also business folks on their marketing. I am so excited to have you on the show. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
So the accomplishments are impressive. I'm always excited when I've got folks from creative fields on because one of the things we do on this podcast is sort of blow the myths around who are deal makers and where deals are done. And, although I certainly have had my share of investment bankers and people from financial services and, tech, companies that are raising money in these stereotypical ways that deals are done, I also have this big variety of folks. And, some people think, well, it's in the creative fields. What deals are they doing there? Well, I mean, we had Remy Blumenfeld on episode 117, who's done some amazing stuff in entertainment. I don't know if you know him, Dean, but Remy is, has talked about all the deals that he did. I want to give a shout out to Lee Hayes, who was the person who introduced me to Dean. And as you know, folks, if you listen and watch this podcast, she's been on a couple episodes, most recently episode 120. And, Lee is a speaker and manager and does other stuff. She talked about this menopause scarf that she related. So I love when I have guests from different industries to blow those myths around who's a deal maker. Dean, before we go there, though, I want to take you back to when you were growing up as a little kid, maybe
Sure.
8, 10, 12 years old.
Okay.
What did you want to be?
Just a few years ago, obviously, because I'm very young, right?
Exactly. What did you want to be when you were growing up? Because for most folks, it's not usually what they're doing now, but who knows, maybe you're an exception.
No, you're absolutely right. For so many of us, it's like, a curving path towards success. And I think we all just have to be open to the different opportunities that come before us. I started as a kid performer. I've always been a ham. I've been that, guy who put on shows in the backyard, got all of my neighbors together, and we would make up a show and I'd produce it and try to get their parents to pay, to buy tickets to see them in the show in our backyard. So I've always been quite bossy, I guess, always been a director and producer at heart. So I started as a performer. I, moved from the backyard into doing performing in Hollywood as a singer and dancer and performer in music videos. And then I was also an original cast member of the Disney musical Newsies. So I started in front of the camera, but nowadays I work behind the camera, and I was happy to make the transition.
I love it. And I know that you were saying to me in the previous conversation that, Newsies was, which we all think is, this hugely popular thing, wasn't as popular in the beginning. That, it has a reputation now, but it didn't start out that way.
You're absolutely right. At the time that we filmed Newsies, I went to the theater and it was like me and my friends were the only ones in there. The movie bombed. It was not a success when it first was released in theaters many years ago. And then, it was something that I didn't even include on my resume. I removed it from my resume as a performer because it was considered such a failure. And then in recent years, it's gained a cult following. I think young kids grew up watching it on the Disney Channel. I think they ran it in loop because it was a failure. And so it was cheap to air it. And so lots of kids grew up watching it, and it's become this big success now.
Yeah. What's interesting to me is I've seen, so I remember I think it was like 1999, I was in a thing, it happened to be for the Coro New York Leadership Institute, and they did some exercise where for some reason they asked a bunch of us in this retreat on what our favorite movie was. And for me, I said Shawshank Redemption, and I was the only one that said that. And I had seen it in the movies, and apparently like a similar thing happened with Shawshank in that it did not do very well in the movies. It wasn't super popular when it started. It got some critical acclaim, but then it was in rotation on TV over and over and over again. And now when they do these surveys, it comes up as, one of the top movies for most people. But that wasn't true in the beginning. It's only because they've seen it over and over again on TV.
Well, yes, we'll say it got better with time, or perhaps Newsies was just ahead of its time. We'll say my performance was just ahead of its time, and it took a while for the world to catch up. We'll just pretend that's what the case was, right?
We'll go with that.
Okay.
We'll go with that. When was the transition to behind the, from in front of the camera to behind the camera?
Well, it wasn't a light switch. It wasn't like that, of course. I mean, you're an extremely successful person in so many different ways. You know that it takes a lot of grind to get there. And so it was a slow transition of working into becoming a choreographer and then a director on stage and that sort of thing, and really just honing my skills and always knowing that I was more comfortable behind the scenes. So it was a progression over time, and getting different opportunities and being open to them, which is really great because I got to wear a lot of different hats, got to be an assistant writer on this show, and then an assistant director on this show, and then an assistant producer on this show, and really had the experience, which has helped me so much now with McFlicker Media, where I have to wear all the hats and, oversee everything. It's great that I've had a background where I've, played those different roles in different types of productions.
I love it, and we're gonna talk in a moment about some of the types of deals you do now, and the difference between a creative producer and what some of us think about it as producers is the people sort of raise the money and and sign the talent. But I'm going to take you back again. What was the it could be anything that comes to mind, whether when you were a kid, a little later in your career, whatever. What was the first deal of any type that you could remember doing?
We joked about it before about putting on the shows in the backyard, but I think of that as a deal. It was the art of the deal of convincing all of the kids in the neighborhood to follow what I wanted them to do, and then convincing them to show up for rehearsals, and convincing, craft service, my mom, to make the, lemonade or whatever it was to serve all of us, convince somebody to, be in charge of making the set, meaning borrowing their lawn chairs or whatever it was. So I think the art of the deal is something that we practice from early on, and we all can get better and better at honing those skills.
I love it. And frankly, right, a lot of what you did in the backyard there and bringing together these key people is what a creative producer does. Right?
Yes, absolutely. It's the art of bringing together all of the different disciplines to make one cohesive entertainment package. And isn't that what we do with all businesses? You have somebody who works on the budget. You have somebody who works, on the legalities of the negotiation of the things that are going together. You have a marketing department, you have your sales department. So I think all businesses can relate to the idea of that you have to bring together all of the different disciplines and all of the people and their different expertise, and you have to be rowing in the same direction, and you have to bring the deal together in order to move your business forward. So whether it's an entertainment product or it's a widget that's being produced in a factory, it's the same concept. And I think that a good producer is like a good CEO and bringing together the facets of the company.
And I would imagine, and I've known, from other situations, that all of those arrangements look different, right? I mean, some people are employed, there's some outside contracting, there's, key strategic partners. I mean, there's strategic alliances, whatever you want to call them, So can you talk a little bit about all of those moving pieces and how one would, bring that together on,
Sure. Yeah. We can give, as you said, the art of the deal is different in each situation. Every single, product that you're producing can bring different permutations. Last year, as you had mentioned, I had the great opportunity of producing the world's first Minions holiday special, which was a deal that brought together Universal Pictures, Illumination Studios, and NBC Television. So you have these three separate business entities that all have to do a deal together, and it was, a wonderful product. At the network, I've had an opportunity to produce all sorts of different types of things, lots of marketing for many of the biggest shows that NBC has had in the past. I was part of the team that launched The Voice. I helped launch This Is Us, America's Got Talent, even the Peacock streaming network. And now, as I mentioned, with my own company, McFlicker Media, I'm producing not just for film and television, but for business clients, because great storytelling is not limited to the entertainment industry. It's the heart of marketing, any successful business or product. And so I think, as I said before, it's really about bringing together the different pieces. That could be a celebrity endorsement for your product, or it could just be the star salesman of the division and making them part of your business deal. It's the same idea of bringing everyone together to sort of, reach your goals, as it might be.
I love it. And, and one of the things that I've talked about in the past, and we've had some folks on from different fields, is that, we make this distinction here at DealQuest of organic growth, which is through sales and marketing and providing great products and services, and deal-driven growth, right? Which is all these various types of deals. But they're not mutually exclusive. And I always say you have to be able to have organic growth. You need to be able to get a customer, a client, a viewer, a listener, a subscriber, whatever it is in your field. But even so, marketing itself for me goes into the bucket of organic growth, right? You sell and you market, whatever. But in doing marketing, there are deals that get done, right?
Absolutely.
Strategic alliances. You talked about bringing in a celebrity endorser, right?
Yeah.
That's a deal. I mean, the marketing content and producing that might be, for me in the category of organic growth. But when you bring in a celebrity endorser, or you do some sort of strategic alliance, or you bring in a key, partner to help, produce or market the show, or, those are all deals, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yes. And often, as you know, when you see a movie, there's, the opening credits, you see 10 different vanity cards of the different production companies involved. And that's because there's a very complicated deal and everybody needs to bring something to the table.
Right. And so it's interesting. Do you find, because you do with McFlicker Media now work in the entertainment field and in other fields, there's some stereotypes, right? And I'm always one to want to blow up stereotypes when they're not true, and to acknowledge that sometimes there's truth under, there's a reason the stereotype comes about.
I'm dying to know where you're going with this, because I have no idea what you're about to say. Tell me.
So yeah, I mean, having been in the creative field and now working with businesses in other fields, right? Yeah. Do you find that whether it's dealing with the personalities, whether it's, dealing, whatever, that there is a difference, or is that stereotype of creative folks kind of overblown?
It's overblown. I think there are divas in every industry. And I love working with business clients because they often are very focused on the specific message of the deliverables, versus in the creative process, sometimes it's a little bit more of a discovery of, are we going to make it more of a love story or more of an action thing? When you're selling a house, sometimes it's a little bit clearer of what the ultimate goal is, but it comes down to great storytelling, regardless of what it is that you're doing. We live in an era of information overload, right? I mean, boring stuff becomes invisible because everything is constantly bombarding us, competing for our attention, gramming, zooming, snapping, messengering, memeing, gifing. I mean, in a world of too many choices, the solution is to ignore the ordinary stuff. Mass media used to try to smooth out all of the rough edges to reach the largest audience. Well, that doesn't work anymore. Now you have to connect with your customer. You have to connect with your consumer in a more meaningful way. And at McFlicker Media, I show you how to do some of that.
That's great. That's great. And you find, let's talk about some of the other trends you're seeing, right? Because One of the things that at least we've been hearing, and I've seen some evidence of it, even on, like, let's say, commercial TV spots from big companies, is a move towards at least trying to be seen as more socially conscious.
Sure.
Allowing different voices to come up, cause-based marketing, things like that. What are you seeing around that whole area?
Well, I think in general, in order to make an impact, you have to tap into a deeper universal truth. It can't be just about the widget itself. It has to be about something more meaningful in people's lives, why they might want that widget. Yeah. As Simon Sinek says, you have to find the why behind the what of your company, its product, or whatever it is that you're doing. I like to say that sell is a 4-letter word. Instead, you have to tell the story of why somebody would be interested in your business. What is the story that it plays in the marketplace? What's its role? What is the character? In life and in business, you can produce the story that you want to unfold.
So where do people do that, or companies do that well? And then, where do they misstep? Because we've certainly seen plenty of examples of missteps, right? Where people try to create a narrative, a story, associate themselves with particular trends or causes, and they really do it poorly.
Yes, it has to be organic. Yeah, you're absolutely right. It has to be a natural fit. It has to truly match your product, your services, or it can seem ridiculous. Every marketer tells a story. Successful marketers don't talk only about features and benefits. They tell a relatable story that is truthful, that is organic for the product or services that they're talking about. And we believe it when it's done well. When somebody buys a new house, you aren't just selling them on the square footage and the number of bedrooms and bathrooms. Yes, you have to mention those things, but that isn't the full story. You want to tap into something authentic and true and relatable. You want to think about, what does the new house possibly mean to this person? Perhaps it means more success. Perhaps it represents a better family life. Perhaps it represents the sense of community for a neighborhood that they want to be part of. You want to just tap into something that's more meaningful, because when we care, we share, and your business grows.
Yeah, no question about that. And listen, it's especially with all the noise these days, it's not easy to do, which is why, frankly, folks like you that really know how to do that.
Tell a story.
What's that?
I said, it's people like me who tell a story.
Yeah, who tell us, but know how to tell a story authentically in a way that resonates with the market. And I'm sure, obviously all of your background as a performer and as behind the scenes and working with, in entertainment. I mean, that's what entertainment's trying to do, right? Is tell a story people will relate to. And, so I'm sure that's helped a lot in terms of the marketing side of things.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I like to say, if all the world's a stage, your life hack is to be a producer.
Well, and it's interesting because it's so funny. I made a conscious decision when I started this podcast that I would not script it. And I'm not judging any people who do scripted podcasts. Everything's different. But I love the fact sometimes, I end up asking questions or going places where, based upon what the guest says, that I have no idea I was going to go. So what just came to my mind was, I like this idea of being a producer. And one of the things that I believe in life, just at a much more sort of fundamental, for me, it's a spiritual level, is that we're all conscious creators, right? If we're doing our lives, I don't want to use the word right, like in judgment, but if, we can have the best lives if we understand that we are conscious creators, and that we don't live at the expense of things, although things do happen that we don't control, but we at least have control over our relationship to those things that happen. And I believe we can consciously create our lives. And one of the things that I don't know if I've shared on this podcast, but I've shared in other contexts, is, many years ago, I'm in an entrepreneurial group and we do themes every year. And I don't know, it might've been 10 or so years ago, we had a theme called Ideal Life Now, right? How do we have more of our ideal life now? We're not going to work and then someday we'll retire and then do all these things we love. How do we have our ideal life now? And just that shift in mentality, and that way of applying conscious creation, like how do I create more of my ideal life now, has so altered my life over the last decade or so. So, it just comes to mind, and it relates to, I think it's I'm saying the same thing, right? That we are a producer and we can produce
Yeah. Well, I love that that's, something that has been meaningful in your life and part of so much of your ongoing success in so many different areas, Corey. You're tapping into a lot of what my TED Talk was about, which was the subtitle was How to Get What You Want Using a Producer's Perspective. So it's very much like you're saying in business, in life and in business, when it really matters, how do you take charge of opportunities and shape the decisions that are going to, impact your life in those make it or break it moments? And so I have found using a narrative organizational structure based on film and television techniques is a great sort of methodology, at least to examine the situation and try to, from a producer's perspective, influence what happens. And so in my TED Talk, I break it down to, 5 specific key points of film and television that can be applied to any business or life situation.
So we're not going to go through all 5, and people should go watch Dean's TED Talk. But why don't you give us 1 or 2, of those producer, approaches or techniques?
Absolutely. So, one of them is, thinking about dialogue, being very specific. We tailor our message often to the audience that we're speaking to. You're going to talk differently when you're hanging out with your friends with a beer on Friday night than when you're in church on Sunday morning with grandma. And neither use of your language is fake or artificial. Those are just different sides of yourself, different parts of your personality. So in that same sort of way, how we naturally adjust our language, I encourage people to look at their dialogue in devising an effective communication plan based on who they want to speak to. Specific audiences, when it comes to the marketing place for your business, you're going to want to use certain verbiage, terminology that's going to be more effective in communicating with the people that you want to reach. And again, to reiterate, none of this is about being inauthentic with your product or your business or services. It's about honing your message to be more impactful and more truthful to the people you want to speak to.
Yeah, no, that's powerful. And I love the fact that you focus on the fact that it's not inauthentic. It's not like we're just designing the message because the audience wants to hear it.
Yeah.
We're looking at, and I believe this, right? We're all, despite the fact that we live in a world of sound bites and trying to sort of label people, right? Yeah. We're all complex beings with many different aspects of us that are true to ourselves. And, for me, I agree with that, that you sort of, if you're smart, you do something that's consistent with who you are, but you just pick that aspect of you or that way of expressing that's true to you, that's most, that will most resonate with the audience or the people or, whoever. And that's true whether you're pitching a client for business or whether you're, raising capital or whether you are, putting together a production or you're putting together a marketing plan, right?
And I think you're absolutely right. One of the reasons why I think that coming from a television background has been really helpful in doing presentations and sizzles and audiovisual, sales pieces for different corporate clients is because television is ongoing. Unlike making a movie trailer where I could make it anything I want, once you've bought that movie ticket, whether you like the movie or not, you already spent the money. Television is ongoing. So I've had the experience in having to tell a truthful story to get people invested because they need to come back. If they watch one episode of a show that does the company no good, in the same sort of way as if I fool you into making a deal and it's not a good deal, you're not going to want to work with me again. If I, do a sales presentation for your company and, it isn't truthful, you're not going to want to work with that company again or buy their product again. And so television has been a great background for me in working with corporate clients in producing audio and video for them because they have to have truthful, interesting stories that make their customers want to continue coming back.
Yeah. Let's take a break from the show for a minute so I can invite you to a new way to determine your deal readiness. I created a fast and easy assessment that will determine exactly how deal ready you are. Once you complete the assessment, I use your responses to identify the obstacles that are holding you back from being a deal-driven growth genius.
It's as easy as heading to CoreyKupfer.com/assessment. That's CoreyKupfer.com/assessment and filling out a few multiple choice questions. I'll be checking in after the episode to see what your results are. Now back to the show.
Let's talk about the medium a little bit too, right? Because, big companies, I don't know, well, maybe you'll answer this question first in terms of the range of size of companies that you tend to work with. Sure. But certainly, the rap on bigger companies is, like in all areas, that they pivot more slowly and whatever. And you'll hear people like Gary Vaynerchuk and others who, rail against these companies that are still putting a lot of money into traditional media, which doesn't work as well anymore. And doing more online and things like that. What are you seeing in terms of the marketing mix? And, certainly, we all know, certainly at least online, video is so much more impactful.
Yes.
So what are you seeing in terms of that marketing mix and, and trends and types of companies you work with?
The push is to video, as you say. I mean, we all see it probably in our own lives, how we try to read the news and there's less and less of the written word and more visual images. There is the push towards multimedia in just about every industry. I think that the proliferation of video screens has also pushed that a little bit more. When I began in the industry, billboards were static. And now, as we know, the world is turning into Times Square with moving billboards in just about every city. So the push to having video product just about everywhere for your business is more and more important. Again, it isn't just about having something flashy, though. You want it to truly represent your company and the story that you want to tell in the marketplace.
Love it. So in terms of McFlicker Media and the work you do for clients, are there key strategic, do you do everything in-house, or the key strategic alliances or other folks you work with on some of the, putting some of the projects together?
Yeah, well, when forming the little, it's an advertising agency, full service advertising agency, but I didn't want to have a lot of overhead.
Yes.
When you talk about being smart, in Deal Quest, the idea of being able to partner with really talented people and be able to expand and contract based on the needs of the client has made me be able to undercut all of the larger agencies out there who have big offices, fancy, beautiful offices that you can go to their boardroom and see a beautiful presentation, but you're paying for that overhead when you go to those advertising agencies. So I'm lean and mean and nimble, but I also, from all of my years working on Broadway and other places, I have the relationships to be able to do deals with really talented people, with the greatest graphic designers who I can bring in, as a specialty. You aren't stuck with the person in-house who's good at cars but bad at drawing computers or whatever it might be. I'm able to do deals with specialists in the industry and bring them in and out based on, the client needs, which has been really great.
And I think that's a key point. And I was going to, I had in my mind to raise, if you hadn't raised it, but you did, is that, this more flexible business model, it's interesting because it's one thing to say, hey, we have lower overhead, we're more competitively priced. And that's something that, smaller companies have sold on, for a long time, forever, right? Mm-hmm. But the interesting thing, the thing that's more interesting for me, and it's, it's not only because it's sort of more of a deal because you're having these strategic alliances or people you partner with or whatever, but because I think it answers an objection that people have because, the question, and listen, as a small, I compete with the bigger law firms, sure. On my law firm side, we all, have that as entrepreneurs in our various fields. And, one, I'm a believer that if you're selling exclusively, which you're not arguing for, but it's a factor, but if you're selling exclusively on being lower price, that's never a good thing because people buy value, right? They don't only buy price. So you have to have the other half of it. You have to say, we are cheaper than the big guys and we're able to do it at least as well or better, right? You need that second half of it.
Yes.
And because if cheaper means poorer product, you can get some, there's always a cheaper version of something. So what this business model has done, which is a more deal-based model and employment model, is I think given the best argument for companies like yours, like mine, like a lot of others, to say why you can actually compete and do as good or maybe even better product than some of the bigger places. And that is because you can partner with the exact right talent for the project on any given thing. And, when you have somebody in-house and you're paying them salary, right, you're going to want to use them for the project. And you gave a great example, where somebody's good on cars and they're not good on, computers, so I actually think this evolution in business model, where you have relationships, strategic alliances, do deals with key people that you bring in when you need them, has really made smaller entrepreneurial companies truly much more competitive, because not only do you have the price side, but you can compete on quality and win.
Absolutely. I agree with you. But the flip side of that is also, Corey, not to age both of us, but we've been doing it for decades. It's very different. If you're a small company and it's some kid out of college, right out of law school or something like that, you have years and years of experience putting together amazing deals. And as a lawyer, you have all of these different, experiences that you bring to the table. So now you are in this amazing position of being able to offer your clients all of that expertise without the overhead. I come from a background, as you said, I've directed Jennifer Lopez in, Super Bowl spots and, John Legend and Carrie Underwood. Oh, you know what? Before we go any further, I should probably warn the listeners of your podcast to watch their toes, because clearly I'm going to be dropping a lot of names. But the point is we come to it with lots of experience. And so having had the experience on all of those other deals, now being able to apply them, just as you said, to bring in specialists because we have those relationships, is a win-win for the clients. It wouldn't be the same if we were brand new to either of our respective industries.
No question about it, and I do agree with you. I think it's an evolution of our experience, but it also is an evolution of business model, right? I mean, folks our age, when we were younger, right? 3 years ago, right? Whatever, decade, right? But I'm not kidding aside, but decades ago, there were just fewer options. People didn't work this way as much, so I think it's a combination of both, no question.
Absolutely, COVID taught me the ability to not have to be in the recording studio, to be on set. I had the great fortune of working on the Universal Studios backlot for over 20 years. And it was amazing. I got to drive the golf cart around, and it was like a dream come true. And I just thought that was how you did production. And now with the new technologies that are out there, if you have built those relationships, you don't physically need to be in the same spaces that any of us used to in order to have a successful business.
Yeah, no question. So Dean, you also do speaking. Obviously, we mentioned your TED Talk and gave a little piece of that.
Sure.
But tell us also about what your other speak. What do you speak on? What do you speak? Give us a little bit about your speaking background.
Yeah. Well, the producer's perspective, as I mentioned before, is my key speech that I'm often asked to do. And what's really wonderful is it's full of all of the pizzazz of some of those backstage stories, real things that have happened when I've been lucky enough to produce in different arenas, but how it can apply to just about any business or any life situation. So that's the one that I do most commonly. And it's been really wonderful. I've been able to travel the world doing it. Of course, during COVID, everything went virtual, but things are slowly beginning to open up. And so I'm going to be, doing different presentations of the producer's perspective around the world. I also talk about storytelling for business and get very, specific with how to hone your specific story in the marketplace for your business. I've also done speeches at colleges, which has been really fun. The how to go from being, in class to the corner office, how to make that transition, and the behind the scenes stuff that I just wish somebody would have told me. We all learned the hard way if somebody would have just given me this little bit of a roadmap. And so that one is very specific to college aged audiences, which is also something that I've done quite a bit.
Love it. One other question, and then we'll get to the last couple of questions to wrap this up. So you went from being in a big company environment for many, many years to being an entrepreneur. I'm always fascinated by that transition. I did it many years ago. I work with part of what I do in various fields. Financial services certainly is take people who are employed and help them become business owners and entrepreneurs. tell us a little bit about that decision and that journey. And, most folks I know, once they go and become an entrepreneur, they don't go back, but it doesn't mean that it's 100%, there's some advantages of being in a place that's
absolutely.
And tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah, it's all very new and it's very exciting and very scary, of course. But as you said, it gives you the flexibility. My TED Talk surpassed 100,000 views recently. And so I'm being asked to speak more. And this really gives me the freedom to be able to take a client and work on a project for a business for a month. And then once, that I've delivered that, I can say, I'm going to be a guest speaker on a cruise ship, for 3 weeks. Right. So having the freedom to be able to travel and to go back and forth between doing public speaking. I've also started teaching. I'm a professor at Troy University, and I have the flexibility to be able to call my own schedule as an entrepreneur. So there are certainly advantages, but working part of a large company also has, its amazing aspects as well. So it's very new, but so far so good.
That's awesome. Well, listen, I'm excited for you. Obviously, with your background in relationships and skills, you're gonna, it's gonna be great. I'm sure. I mean, I look back and when I started my own law firm when I was 30. So you talk about, I was just 6 years out of school. I didn't have the kind of relationship I have now. So it took me, something to build it. And I look at folks who make that move later in a career when they really have much stronger, relationships and a much bigger reputation. And not that it's easy, but it's like, hey, you got a lot in place. People know your talent, know your skills, and so I'm sure you would have already been, and you will continue to be, super successful with McFlicker.
Thank you.
And I wish you all the best with it.
Thank you.
So talking about that, and your talks and everything you do, what's the best places for people to find out more about you?
DeanMcFlicker.com. Dean is my, first name, like Dean Martin or James Dean. So Dean, last name McFlicker, which is like Mick, like McDonald's, flicker, like a movie flickering. So DeanMcFlicker.com is an easy place to just get in touch with me. If you want to talk at all or reach me, that's the easiest place. And of course, my TED Talk is on TED.com. If you search for Dean McFlicker on TED.com, you'll be able to see that as well.
Love it. So, he said he just passed 100,000. So let's get him up to a couple 100,000.
Sounds good.
So my final question on the podcast is always about my highest value in life, which is freedom. And for me, that means everything from freedom from oppression from all peoples around the world to the reason I'm an entrepreneur and I don't have a boss and I run my own company and create my own life. What does freedom mean to you in your life and business?
Great question. What does freedom mean to me? I think it's evolving, right? Freedom is the ability to adapt, the ability to grow, to keep changing, to strive for new things, and to keep trying to be a better person, a better business person, and a better person in the world.
Love it. Love it. Dean McFlicker, thank you so much for being a phenomenal guest on the DealQuest podcast.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining me on this episode of DealQuest, where we help you understand how deal-driven growth can be your ticket to freedom. I want to invite you to a unique way to tap into the wisdom and experience of the DealQuest community. Join the DealQuest Deal Den Zoom calls, a free monthly 90-minute mastermind. In the mastermind, we address all the challenges you may be facing and help support you with the opportunities that may arise in terms of deal-driven growth. You will get input not only from me, but all the members on the call will collaborate and serve each other in a mastermind format. To sign up for the free mastermind, go to www.corykupfer.com/dealden. That's corykupfer.com/dealden. I'll see you there. I'm Corey Kupfer. Until next week, wishing you the freedom and financial prosperity that I know your DealQuest will bring.